Traditional therapy and pharmaceuticals have such low success rates as it relates, especially to mental health issues, because they literally only scratch at the surface of deeply rooted emotional pain. They often address the symptoms rather than the root cause, which leads to temporary relief instead of lasting transformation. There is an absolute link between what our ancestors experienced as trauma and what we are currently experiencing as it relates to emotional pain. Now, we know that from the lens of science, epigenetics especially, it is suggested that trauma can leave this biochemical mark on a person's genes, which can then be passed down to subsequent generations, like I've shared with you all in past podcasts. And we also know spiritually, ancestral trauma can absolutely manifest as inherited patterns of emotion and behavior that stems from unresolved conflicts and lack of forgiveness, which I talked about in yesterday's video. So check that out here before so you can get a little bit more information on that. Today, particularly on the Sovereign Woman Movement podcast, we're going to be talking about and going over the 6 exact ways that Kundalini Yoga meditation therapy not only gets to the root cause of ancestral, intergenerational, emotional pain and trauma, but disrupts it, healing 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you. Satnam, beautiful goddesses, Satnam, sovereign women. Welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Woman Movement podcast on this beautiful ancestral Kundalini karmic reset Wednesday. As you know, every Wednesday I'm coming to you live to share with you more about these incredible technologies of Kundalini Yoga and, of course, miracle spiritual psychotherapy that'll help you get to the root cause and disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns. In fact, today I'm going to be sharing with you the scientific and spiritual aspects of this practice so that we can debunk any, stereotypes or all these things that we think that Kundalini Yoga or meditation might be. But to start, we have to first really explore what Kundalini is and then how it is associated to the direct root cause, which is the nervous system, the brain, and ultimately your DNA. So to begin, I wanted to talk to you all about what Kundalini Yoga is. Kundalini Yoga many times is referred to as the yoga of awareness, the mother of all yogas. It is comprised of the 22 limbs of yoga itself, and it delves deep into the intricate connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. And when we think about healing in modern society, we address the symptoms, but we don't necessarily look at the connection, because we now know that the mind, your thoughts, are literally what are creating the physical illness. All physical illness starts with an emotion. And when we don't address the mind, the body, and the spirit together, then it's almost like just putting a Band-Aid on a wound and hoping that it'll heal. What Kundalini Yoga is it's a comprehensive practice that really helps incorporate the physical postures, which we're going to talk about today, breath control. It also helps us in the chanting of the mantras, which we're going to talk about today, and how it impacts and gets to the root cause of our problems. And of course, the meditation practice. All of it to awaken what is known as Kundalini energy, which is located at the base of the spine. Now, this energy hasn't been awakened by you or by generations in the past because either the practice was not available to you, because at one point you actually had to be a king or queen to learn these practices, royalty. It's Raj Yoga, or perhaps you have to be a yogi. You have to be someone who trained under another yogi, another master for a long time. I'm talking about 100 years to be able to really learn these practices. But in the 60s, Jogi Bhajan came from India and brought this practice to the West. He was a futurist who knew what was coming down the pipeline. Many of the things that he predicted happening in the future are happening now. And he also knew that we would need this as a society, as a human race, to be able to thrive in this new age of consciousness. Now, the primary focus of what Kundalini is literally on the movement and transformation of energy. That's why you're going to hear a lot that it is known as the science of energy. And ultimately, emotions are energy in motion. And the language of our ancestors is actually through emotion. And what we do when we bring the energy from the rooted Kundalini is we're dissolving traumatic patterns, because the reason that our breath, that most of us cannot breathe above the belly button, or we're not conscious about our breathing, is because we've been through emotional trauma, we've been through physical trauma. And because of that, like, the energy literally gets stuck at the lower root chakra. These chakras are known as brains. You could think of it that way as well. And they each carry a specific function that also is associated with emotions and even connected to the meridian lines, which are in Chinese medicine. This is where the flow of energy actually occurs. And when we go through trauma, they become blocked, which then blocks the energy flow to organs like your liver, like your kidneys, like your heart, which then cause the actual physical illness. Now, this practice is rooted in ancient knowledge, and it's a form of yoga that not only helps to strengthen the body, but also facilitates this emotional healing the mind, especially particularly addressing generational trauma, because we get to the level of the DNA, of the subconscious mind, of the nervous system and the brain, which is what we're going to talk about today. Kundalini Yoga is also very known for its transformative benefits of being very precise, very exact. Now that I'm in Kundalini Yoga therapist school, because I've recently transitioned, I became a teacher almost 5 years ago, and the amount of healing that I experienced in my life, which now I help women move through as well, was so tremendous that I just wanted to continue my studies. So what I recently have been doing is transitioning from going from a Kundalini Yoga teacher to actually becoming a Kundalini Yoga therapist, which has taken me deeper into the consciousness of what Kundalini Yoga is as a therapy. And this includes training and assessments with really wise doctors, PhDs, professors, Kundalini Yoga therapists, in essence, that have really helped me in the clinical application, as well as assessment and helping people heal. And also enrolling in the Kundalini Yoga therapist program and being accepted, I receive now the added benefit of clinical supervision, which I'll have to go through, and of course, individual mentoring and personal development throughout the process. So now that I'm in the process of obtaining my therapist certification, it's been a complete mind-blowing experience, because I've been able to really understand the science behind this incredible practice. And I've been able to understand why it healed me from these very serious ancestral karmic patterns. So what we need to understand is that these patterns, they lie deeply engraved in the body, in the mind, and in the spirit, but especially in the subconscious mind. Our body keeps score, which we're going to talk about that in a future podcast episode. But just know that the subconscious mind literally is where we are operating from 90 to 95% of the day. We're not even conscious of what we're thinking. This is why we are not even conscious about breathing above the belly button. And so what happens with the subconscious mind is that it is also connected to the limbic brain, which is a part of our emotional perceptions, which perception is everything. You can not change perhaps what happened, but if you shift the perception about what happened, you can heal instantaneously. And what we need to understand is that if the subconscious mind is connected to the limbic brain, it's part of our emotional perception that then is connected to what? Our central nervous system. In fact, everything in our body is actually connected to our brain through our autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, the fight and flight. And when you've been through trauma and you haven't received therapy, what happens is that even if the trauma occurred to you as a child, in the subconscious mind, you're still operating under that trauma, because the body keeps score and the nervous system has been wired that way. The brain is no longer functioning the same way it used to. So you might be 30 years later in a party, and all of a sudden there's some kind of memory that triggers the experience, and all of a sudden your body starts to react as if you were back in that childhood abuse or in that childhood trauma, or even at a deeper level in an ancestral trauma. One of the things I shared yesterday in my video was the experiment they did with mice, and how they were electrically shocked and given the smell of cherry blossom at the same time. And they found out that generations later, even though they were never electrically shocked, just when they were introduced to this cherry blossom smell, they were really afraid, and their body started to react with fear. The cortisol hormone went up because of the stress. The adrenaline started to change in their bodies physically. This is why many of us are like, why am I afraid of elevators, or why am I afraid of water? Could be, again, through epigenetics, something that your ancestor did not heal from that now you also inherited. So what we need to understand is that our nervous system is automated, and this is what our habits are, what our behaviors are, what our perceptions are, and they're not going to change until you actually bring them to your conscious awareness. Kundalini Yoga, the mother of awareness, and then you replace them, which we're going to talk about next, the 6 ways Kundalini Yoga replaces them with stronger, positive emotional perceptions, such as gratitude, such as love, such as joy, such as wisdom. It doesn't matter what's happening in your current circumstances or what occurred to you. Everything is healable. Everything can be transformed because energy can be transformed. And that is exactly what Kundalini Yoga does. So to actually address and to heal generational wounds deeply engraved in the subconscious, in the body, in the mind, in the spirit, in the nervous system, in the brain, and ultimately in the DNA, we have to disrupt the pattern at that level, and especially at the level of the subconscious mind, which again equates the nervous system and the brain, which is the whole foundation of my Sovereign Woman Academy. That's literally all we focus on. And what we do in there is we focus on the specific facets of what Kundalini Yoga is comprised of. So for any of you that have never practiced yoga or meditation, this is going to be a great class, a great podcast episode for you to better understand it, so you don't feel scared to actually try it. What I also did is I created a worksheet for you all that goes through these 6 different layers of Kundalini Yoga meditation therapy and how it actually disrupts these ancestral karmic patterns that you can download by clicking in the description here below on the podcast episode or here on YouTube. So let's first understand what it's comprised of and what it does to us in the subconscious mind and in the spirit and in the body. So the first aspect of what Kundalini Yoga is known as breath. And that is also, you'll hear it be called Pranayama. And what breath is or breath work in Kundalini Yoga, what it does is that the specific number of times you breathe in and out, how you hold your breath, how you exhale out, all of that regulates the energy within your body, which is your emotions. And again, most of us are not consciously breathing 90 to 95% of the day. So that is why the subconscious mind is running the show. So what pranayama does, breathing techniques and breath work, it is actually oxygenating the entire body. It's clearing the mind. It's strengthening the nervous system. It balances the 2 hemispheres of the brain. It cleans your aura, which is the electromagnetic field that surrounds all living creatures, that ultimately is like your protectant of your immune system. If you have a weak aura because you have a ton of emotions that you're unconscious about, then you're going to get physically sick a lot. You're also going to get spiritually sick, which means you can enter into rooms where the energy is of low vibration. All of a sudden you'll absorb it and you'll start to actually feel that way yourself too. What it also does is that it helps improve our digestion. It helps release fears. It helps release insecurities and irritability, depression, because depression is the suppression of emotions. And it helps deal with other fear-based blocks, because emotions like fear become blocked physically in the body. So what pranayama exercises do, and they're part of most, if not all, Kundalini Yoga meditations and kriyas. A kriya is a specific recipe of exercises, the way we position our hands, our eyesight, all of it, which we're going to talk about right now, that gives you a specific result. There are kriyas to alleviate depression, to heal the inner child, to heal the mother wound, for prosperity, for wealth. I mean, everything is a science of sound, breath, and mudra, that when applied, then you'll get those specific results. So pranayama is a very important aspect of what we do inside of the Kundalini Yoga practice. Now, the second part of a Kundalini Yoga meditation is probably the most well-known. It is known as Asana. And when most people think about yoga, they're usually thinking about asana, which is like the physical postures and the exercises for which yoga has come to be known in the West. In fact, when people think of yoga, they're like, I can't do yoga because I don't know how to bend my body. I'm not flexible. First of all, it starts in the mind. So Kundalini Yoga doesn't focus so much on the asana moves or body practices that maybe other yoga practices do. But I can assure you that you will be able to bend your body, do a headstand, do all that stuff when you control your mind first. So it's the mind that's blocking you. So it's not about how flexible you are. It's about doing the practice to basically improve that flexibility. And it's not the physical flexibility, it's the flexibility of your mind. So asana is important because the way we position our body, but it could be you sitting in easy pose or you sitting on your knees, or if you can't sit on your knees, you sit in easy pose, or the way you even lie down. All of those things are a perfect science because the physical postures then create a chemical reaction inside your body, inside your spirit, inside of your mind. And so what Kundalini Yoga focuses on, it does focus less on asana than some other modern tradition, but it is still a fundamental aspect that is going to be part of nearly every Kriya you practice. Just as breath work helps to cultivate and distribute the prana throughout the body, asana, which is the position of the body, helps to direct that energy flow. So there's a major role of asana in Kundalini Yoga practice, and that is to basically clear, to strengthen, to stabilize, and to open the body to receive its own vital energies. The position of your body dictates in part how those energies can actually circulate. And like I said, it is a fundamental meditation practice. So a lot of my daily sadhana practice consists of chanting. And you might say, well, there's no movement there for the body. There's a ton of movement there for the body. In fact, chanting is the next part of Kundalini Yoga that symbolizes how much we're changing the subconscious mind. We're changing the physical structure of the body by actually doing this. So what mantra is basically chanting of sacred sounds. These are not just random noises or things that people just thought of. This is like an actual science of sound that becomes repeated. That's what japji means, repetition, to basically penetrate the subconscious mind, to reprogram the mind. So think of your mind as like there's these neural pathways where you're unconsciously operating under. And if you've been through trauma, sadly, those are the same streets that you continue to take every single day of your life. But when you start to chant, the body, if it's been through trauma, is like chaos because your body makes a sound. Everything in this world is a frequency. So like if you've been through trauma, it's complete chaos. And what we do with mantra when we chant it, it's like we harmonize the chaos into order, like the universe, from chaos to order. So we use these frequencies and we change those patterns of trauma to patterns of equanimity, of compassion. The mantra that I chant every single day is known as Long Hai Phone Cars. And this sound frequency is like a direct phone line to the connection with God. It expands your capacity and self-awareness of who you are. So different mantras create a different effect. And behind all of them is the science of sound. And what I love now is that there are many scientific research, there's many scientific reports, and there's so much research around these sound frequencies. Like for example, Rama Dasa is the ultimate healing tool in Kundalini Yoga. And it was studied with children who had cancer. And they gave 3 children, one who was going through cancer and chemotherapy. The first group of children did not chant or listen to anything. The second group actually just listened to classical music. And then the third group of children listened to Rama Dasa, and some of them actually chanted it. And then they looked at the studies after some time, and what they realized is that the group that did not listen to anything suffered the most as it relates to chemotherapy and recovery and pain. Then the middle group, they did a little bit better listening to classical music, but the third group was astonishing because not only did they not need painkillers, that afforded them the opportunity, because they weren't experiencing that much pain, that afforded the recovery process to be tremendous. They recovered like so much faster because we all know that pharmaceuticals in the end can cause way more damage than can actually help us. So there's a lot of science now, UCLA, Berkeley, Harvard, different universities that now have studied these sound frequencies and are now really sharing this data with others. There's one particularly meditation that uses the Satan sound frequency that it deserves a Nobel Prize because nothing has been discovered at such a capacity to extend our telomerase, which is our DNA strands. It literally is your lifeline when you're under a lot of stress. These telomerase, these DNA strands, they start to burn off. And that literally, if we look at your telomerase, we can tell how long you're going to live. So if you're that's why they say stress kills, because it's burning off your life force energy. With this sound frequency and this meditation, they found out that after practicing it for only 40 days, the telomerase increased by 40%. You got 40% more life, literally. And that's something that's like unheard of, like no other meditation practice, there's no pill, there's no pharmaceutical that has ever done anything even close to that. And that's just after 40 days. Imagine what happens and it's only for 11 minutes. So imagine if you did this for 120 days or 1,000 days, your entire life would change, because ultimately your purpose in this world is not healing. Your purpose in this world is self-realization, to allow the Kundalini energy to rise from the root to the crown so that you can experience yourself as God experiencing herself through you. So you could have an intimate relationship with God. So mantra is very, very potent, and it's very specific, and it's japji, repeated sounds, it's vibration. It's what activates the molecules and inside of you and even around you. And then these molecules then interact with everything else, right? So by repeating these sound frequencies, you literally are adjusting the vibration of both your environment, but also yourself. The next thing that is a very important aspect of a Kundalini Yoga is known as mudra. And mudra are specific hand gestures. And we use hand gestures because we understand that the specific hand gestures in yogic practice, the hands are an energy map of our consciousness and health. And each area of the hand corresponds to certain parts of the body. In fact, in Chinese medicine and in Kundalini Yoga therapy, which I just recently finished that course last month, I think it was a month and a half ago, we learned all about this. We learned about the different meridian lines and how if you have a pain in a finger or a foot, how that is a deeper connection to something deeper that's happening in an organ, because it's all interconnected and intertwined. So what we know in Kundalini Yoga is that the hand positions, when we form them during a kriya or a meditation, they become techniques for communicating with the body-mind energy system. So when we use various movements such as curling or crossing or stretching or touching the fingers and palms like we do in a Kirtan Kriya, this now shifts the energy within the body, within the mind and the spirit. And all of this is done through the stimulation of nerve endings and the different meridian points that I just told you about that we learn and study in Kundalini Yoga therapist program, but also in Chinese medicine. So by guiding energy through specific channels, we're able to break these subconscious mind patterns, because the fingers can form so many different array of mudras that are used in the Kundalini Yoga tradition. So for example, the Gyan Mudra. The Gyan Mudra is when you touch your thumb to the tip of the pointer finger. The other fingers are nice and straight. You bring your hands down. This stimulates knowledge and receptivity. And every time you touch the tips of the fingers, they stimulate a specific area of the brain. Same thing with chanting. You're touching the upper palate of the brain, of the mouth. It is stimulating specific areas of the brain. It is all literally a perfect science. And then we also have what is known as drishti in Kundalini Yoga. And drishti refers to the focus of the eyes. So sometimes in Kundalini Yoga, you'll hear me tell you, gaze to the middle of the forehead with your eyes closed, or keep your eyes 9/10 open, gazing to the tip of the nose, or gazing to the mudra itself. We've learned that asana is the posture for your body and mudra is the posture for your hands. Well, there's even a posture for your eyes, and that's what drishti is. So the basic concept of drishti is the same. It redirects and directs energy flow. It literally is a Sanskrit word for eye focus. That's what drishti means. And the practical and the philosophical teachings is that where your attention goes, your energy flows. I think all of us have heard that before, right? So where we bring our attention in the eyes, there's a specific science as to why we're doing that and what it is actually doing for our body. For instance, focusing on the third eye point can really enhance your intuition and clarity and can actually create the secretions from the third eye point, pituitary gland, the pineal gland. So all of it becomes this connection that when we actually practice it, it's creating a chemical reaction inside the body, which is changing the subconscious mind. It's changing the neurons in the brain. It's changing the nervous system. And ultimately, it's releasing you from memories of post-traumatic stress disorder that are stuck in the body. And so for me, what this actually looked like, just so you can get an idea, is the reason that I'm so passionate about this and I teach this is because of the incredible healing that it's done for me, for my lineage, my ancestors, and also my living family. Because when you heal yourself as a woman, 7 generations before you are healed, and 7 generations after you are healed. And I am really experiencing that now in my immediate family, especially like with my mom, with my sisters, with my dad, and even, of course, with my husband and with my children, but even his side of the family. I've been practicing a particular meditation to heal my masculine energy, and it heals all the masculine around me. And the incredible miracles that I have seen in the last, I've been practicing this one particularly for almost 90 days. I mean, the healing has even spread to my father-in-law. So that's something that really has just shown me the power of this work. But overall, when I first started this practice, it was an incredibly heart opening. I knew that this was it. I always wanted to be a therapist, and now I understood why I never became a traditional therapist. So what it did for me, first and foremost, it uncoils your potential, because when you're bringing energy from the lower root and your traumas to the top, you gain a shift of awareness, of perception of who you are and what you're here to do. So what ended up happening for me is I found my dharma. I connected to my life purpose. I remember still the very specific day when I was in a silent retreat in Kundalini Yoga teacher training way back when I knew that I was going to leave my 15-year business as a real estate broker. And I mean, I was at the top of my game, especially during that time, over 6 figures, doing what I actually loved it. I didn't hate it. I was managing hundreds of entrepreneurs under me. But in that moment in time and space, I knew that that's not what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And God said, "You're ready." And literally after that silent retreat, I left the industry probably within 2 weeks and never looked back, and never needed that industry to support me financially, spiritually. I could literally cut the cords entirely and felt really confident and assured of it, which is what I'm forever grateful for, because the level of fulfillment that I move through every single day is absolutely undescribable. And it's something that opens my heart to gratitude at every moment of my time and space. The other thing that I was able to do through my practice is have a really intimate relationship with God. I think a lot of people are afraid of Kundalini Yoga because they think it comes from a religion, or they think that if they practice Kundalini Yoga, they can't no longer believe what they believe as it relates to religion. For me, I was never necessarily religious, but I always had a relationship with Jesus Christ and even specific deities like Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mother Mary, and Buddha. And what it did for me is that it fortified that relationship. It actually gave me the true essence of what the teachings were from my brother Jesus Christ, not what religion programming tries to teach us, which most people that are uberly religious, they read the Bible, but then they don't walk the talk. They're not in Christ consciousness. They're judgmental. They have grievances. They hate. They don't forgive. That's not real Jesus Christ consciousness. So for me, what it did is it because I was able to heal the relationship with myself, it healed the relationship with those people around me, but more importantly with God. I went from seeing God as this punishing, not evil, but punishing, mean, judgmental father, to realizing that God loved me unconditionally with my light and with my darkness, that God supported me throughout everything and anything. And now I don't seek for answers outside of me. I seek for answers inside of me, because God is in my life, present and always there. So the the reason that is scientifically is because when you have a daily spiritual practice, what happens is that there's an area of the brain that starts to turn on. And scientists have noticed that those people that don't have a spiritual practice daily, this area of the brain doesn't turn on. So what happens when it doesn't turn on? You have a 60% higher chance of an addiction and a 40% chance higher of suicide because you don't have a daily spiritual practice. So when I actually integrated daily sadhana practice, that area of the brain started turning on, which again is what creates the mystical experience. I mean, the mystical experience, all that is like you having a divine union with God is, it just means your brain and nervous system are working correctly. So when we bring energy from the root to the crown, there's an area of the brain that is known as the cave of Brahma. And the cave of Brahma, basically, it literally looks like a pool, like an area. But when the brain is functioning correctly, it's secreting the glandular secretions that it actually needs to, and not the cortisol or the adrenaline from stress or from the traumas you've been through. They start to create this chemical reaction in the brain that literally creates the mystical experience where there is no separation between you and God. And so the mystical experience can be demystified. It can be scientifically proven. And that's what this practice did for me, where I don't need to compete. I don't need to compare myself with anyone. I'm literally allowing myself to be used as a vessel for God, for what I'm here to do in this lifetime, which I think a lot of people suffer with tremendously. Not only their life purpose, but they don't have a relationship with God. They're afraid of God. And that's why they're always afraid of the other shoe dropping or being punished. The other big thing that I was able to disrupt in my lineage was overcoming addiction. That was huge, especially alcohol. The consistent practice was instrumental for me in healing my addiction to alcohol because it offered me clarity and inner strength, meaning vitality, chi, and it rewrote not why the addiction, but why the pain. Because never ask why the addiction. There's deep, engraved pain when anyone is addicted to anything. So when we deal with the pain, the energy, the emotional aspect of it, then you heal everything else. You don't need the addiction. And last but not least, correlated to addiction, is it healed my depression. I was especially suffering tremendously under what is known as cold depression. In yogic science, Yogi Bhajan told us that cold depression was going to be the biggest downfall of humanity, and it hasn't even reached its peak. The peak he talked about was like 2038, like we're even barely getting started. And what cold depression is you have so much stimulation from the outer world, whether it's through social media, emails, demands, right? Like running your business, all these different things, but there's no inner stimulation. So we literally numb our emotions. That's what depression is. But because we are numbing ourselves, whether we're drinking too much coffee, alcohol, drugs, addiction is so big right now, even toxic relationships, infidelity, something that will make you feel alive. Basically, you want that adrenaline rush, you want that cortisol. Then you're literally numb. You're numb to the world, you're numb to your sensations and emotions, and you feel lost. I mean, you could have it all, which I did, materialistically, it looked like I had it all. I mean, married for now 25 years, the children to an outside world, it looked like, whoa, I want her life. But to me, it was bloody hell. It was World War VIII. It was a place that I didn't want to enter by myself, my mind. So when I started to deal with the cold depression, because it really is a problem of energy, and when you start to circulate energy back into the flow of the meridian lines, which are connected to every organ, then the depression dissipates, it's gone. And without a pill, that's why pharmaceuticals have really done us wrong, especially antidepressants, because that's like a Band-Aid. Like, okay, I'm taking a pill that, by the way, where is depression in the body? So where this pill literally goes and impacts my entire physical vessel, but where is depression? That's not the solution. The solution is dealing with the energy problem, which is that your emotions that you're unconscious about are eating up your vitality. Those traumas you went through, or perhaps your ancestors went through, that you don't want to bring to the light, acknowledge and become aware of, that's what's making you depressed. So I broke all of those patterns: depression, addiction, toxic relationships. Oh my God, especially that. One of the things I don't agree with is believing that your relationship as you get older, it has to get worse, or that the passion goes away. I'm not saying that there are not moments of disagreement or disparity, but there's respect. 1,000% respect, there's trust, there's unconditional love. And actually, my love for my husband only gets bigger and more tremendous and more passionate. Why? Because I love myself. Because I also have a healed nervous system and a wire and an agile brain through my practice. The older people get, the more messed up their nervous system gets, the more messed up their brains get because of all the information they're processing. So you better believe they're not going to have patience for their significant other. You better believe they're going to be angry. You better believe they're going to be judgmental. So we need to really check ourselves as it relates to our belief systems, because if you are, especially in a toxic relationship, I mean, obviously the healing starts with you, and especially as a woman, because a woman is very powerful and literally controls through her aura all relationships. I'm talking about your business, your personal relationships, all of them, all controlled through your aura. And if you don't have energy that's flowing through the system, you're going to be on patterns, and then you're going to create that reality throughout your day. That's why we're not victims. We literally are creating whatever we are unconsciously or consciously thinking. So while ancestral pain can be something that feels like a forever challenge, you might not even be aware of what it is you're carrying within you, which on a podcast episode a couple of days ago, I shared with you how to actually even pull your astrological chart so you can actually pinpoint what is it that I'm really moving through. But what I do know to be true is that Kundalini Yoga and meditation, especially therapeutically, provides tools, provides techniques to actually address, to heal, and to transform these generational wounds at the level of the nervous system and at the level of the brain, which ultimately impacts the subconscious mind and your DNA. What Kundalini Yoga does is that it invites us to tap into what? Our own inner medicine cabinet. You don't need a pharmaceutical from outside, especially as it relates to mental health. I mean, for some things like emergency surgeries or things of that nature, modern medicine is very awesome. But if you are somebody that has been told you have to take a certain pill for the rest of your life, that is not a solution. That is a band-aid, which is only going to get worse and worse with time. So what you need to learn to do is to open up the inner medicine cabinet from within. That is what Kundalini energy is. It is white tantra that once opened, not only does it heal you and disrupts these patterns, but ultimately it takes you on the path of self-realization, which is what you're here to do, to crown yourself as the sovereign woman you are. So as you can see, there is a lot of science behind this practice that really allows us to get to the root cause of these ancestral, intergenerational, traumatic experiences that our ancestors went through. Not only do we have the tools now to disrupt these patterns, but we can also elevate our own consciousness so that we can truly self-realize and live out our divine purpose. So what I did is, like I said, I created a worksheet for you. It's a cheat sheet that breaks down these 6 aspects of Kundalini Yoga meditation therapy to help you disrupt the pattern. So you can click on the comments below here, download it for yourself, and keep it so you can study it and learn to understand exactly what it is that we're doing. Now, if you would like for me to provide actual meditation practices, there are some already on my YouTube channel, which you're more than welcome to go check out. But if you'd like me to provide any further demonstrations or actual meditations, let me know. You know, what kind of content do you want to see on Wednesdays? A lot of the things that I'll be bringing you are the science behind these patterns. For example, next week, we're going to be talking about the inner child or the childhood trauma, and we're going to relate specific mantras and things to that nature. But if there's anything that you feel you are looking to learn or integrate, feel free to send me a DM or put it below here in the comments, and I can definitely facilitate that. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. As you know, that there are 2 other new podcast episodes on the podcast here that are correlated to this theme that we're talking about this week, which is decoding and becoming aware of these ancestral karmic patterns. These 3 episodes are pretty instrumental to help us in the deeper healing work that we're going to be doing as we move through in the podcast, and especially next week and the following week, when we're going to be talking about addiction, and we're going to be talking about toxic relationship patterns, and when we're going to be talking about childhood trauma. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being part of this movement of women that are cycle breakers, disrupting these patterns of ancestral karmic intergenerational pain. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking, and thank you for sharing. I'll see you all next week.